The time has come. PlayStation 4 versus Xbox One.
Whose cuisine will reign supreme? Welcome to Vertical Hole, the tech show where we channel surf through the headlines in search of the big picture. I'm Adam Turner and this is my partner in crime, Alex Kidman. Right now, all eyes are on the new console launches, but first, Alex, give us a quick talk through what's new in tech.
Music streaming service Pandora has announced it'll start inserting ads into its free music service for Australians starting in December. You can of course pay money to Pandora to not have the ads turn up. And apparently some of the ads will be visual, which is a kind of interesting choice for a service you listen to.
Online retail giant Amazon has finally turned its attention to Australia, but only to sell ebooks. If you've got an Amazon Kindle reader, you've now got a choice of shopping in the Australian store. You'll find extra Australian books and you can avoid overseas transaction fees. But it's worth shopping around because sometimes the books are still cheaper in the US store.
The ABC's announced that it's going to revamp its iView service by the end of the year, as well as finally releasing an Android client. I would throw something funny in there, but the funny thing is, it's taken them this long to think about releasing an Android client?
Melbourne and Sydney are preparing to be the last regions of Australia to scrap analogue television broadcast in December. The stats say that around 5% of homes will leave it to the last minute. If you know someone who hasn't made the upgrade to digital TV yet and they're eligible for a government pension, then they might also be eligible for the upgrade assistance scheme. Don't leave it too long though, because the scheme runs out in January. And they're the quick news bites. Now over to Alex with the big picture. Alex, there are two new games consoles on the market. Is it time to jump in? What's the situation with the early games?
Look, the situation with the early games is exactly what it always is with a new game system. There's a few real whiz-bang titles that they're hyping the heck out of in the hopes that that'll draw people in to buy systems. There's a few things you can get on the current systems that maybe have a little bit more visual polish on them, but not a whole lot more content, and that's it. And this, of course, creates the problem that you always get with these things, that if you buy the console up front, you maybe buy one or two games. The stats suggest that people buy about 2 or 3 games with a new console, and then you've got 2 or 3 games for about 3 or 4 months, maybe longer, especially if you bought a Wii U last year, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Now, they're not compatible with old games though, are they? You can't take an Xbox 360 disc or a PlayStation 3 disc and put it in one of the new consoles, is that right?
Well, you can certainly put it in one of the new consoles. It's not going to do you a whole lot.
It's not going to do much though.
It's just going to up your blood pressure a bit. Yeah, no, look, this was a deliberate decision on both of their parts. Sony said that they're going to look into using some kind of streaming service to perhaps deliver PlayStation 3 games to PlayStation 4, but that's very much in the future, and let's face it, that's going to depend on an awful lot of streaming and an awful lot of bandwidth.
So what about digital downloads? Because there's been a big deal with the fact that you can get old games for the PS3 and the Xbox 360 from the online stores and the arcades. Is that kind of stuff likely to work on these new consoles?
Well, the stuff you've already bought, no. They've both been kind of vaguely non-committal about existing purchases, but basically hold on to your PlayStation 3, hold on to your Xbox 360 if you've made big PSN or XBLA purchases respectively. There are some things, and they are offering stuff for prospective buyers in that vein. So for example, Killer Instinct, which hasn't seen a release since the Nintendo 64 was current, is a launch title for the Xbox One. I'm not exactly sure who is clamouring for Killer Instinct to come back, but it's back.
So of the games that you've seen so far for the various consoles and the hands-on that you've had, what's impressed you and what hasn't impressed you?
To be honest with you, not a whole lot is an absolute standout killer app kind of title just yet. I like Dead Rising 3 a lot, but then I like Dead Rising. Not everyone does. I can appreciate that something like Forza 5 is a very, very nice looking game. I'm not a big driving game person myself. The issue they've got is there's really only a very small selection of things that are unique to each console. And so far, it's still that kind of early days. Everyone's feeling out what can be done. We won't actually see the really, exciting, oh my God, I can't believe they did that with a games console kind of games, probably for about 2 years.
So do you reckon people will hold off and stick with their own old consoles until then?
I think if you're a committed hardcore gamer, if you really, really, really love this stuff, you've probably already got a pre-order sitting somewhere, or you're sitting in front of a console as you're watching this right now. For the broader community, you can probably hold off for a bit. The reality is that there will still be releases for the 360 and the PS3 going into next year. Neither company can entirely afford to just say, yeah, we're just scrapping it, the way Microsoft did with its jump from the Xbox to the 360, the original Xbox, that is. So there'll still be software around for those. And of course, if you're a bit of a bargain basement hunter, it's a great time to pick up the really good titles from the 360 and PS3 generation, because they're going to start to get seriously cheap. But this of course leads into the flip side of this, which is that these aren't just gaming machines anymore. The previous generation, the PS3 and the Xbox 360, really wanted to be all singing, all dancing home entertainment machines. These take that a little bit further. What's your thoughts on that, Adam?
Well, that's what I thought was really interesting, because with the last generation of consoles, it was quite clear that the PlayStation 3 wanted to be all things to all men. Hey, look at me, I'm a Blu-ray player. Hey, look at me, I can do this, I can do that. Where the Xbox 360 was very much a games console, and then over time it matured and you got more of the catch-up TV and the other kind of stuff. They backed the wrong horse with HD DVD, but they slowly sort of came to the party as being the home entertainment system. Now it's reversed. What's happened is Xbox One is all about, oh, we're the home entertainment console. We've got a HDMI port in the back, so you can plug in your PVR and watch your television through us, and we'll let you check the program guide. May not work in Australia, and all this kind of stuff. So they're trying to do all this stuff where the PlayStation has said, nah, we're pretty much targeting hardcore gamers first, and that's it. We're not even bundling the camera with the console because we're so keen to keep the price down that we just want to target gamers. And I think that maybe it might be a mistake in the long run when they try to expand, and I wouldn't be surprised in a year or two when they decide they want to go for the next tier of users that they will start to throw the camera in. And that's what I think that Microsoft has done smart up front, throwing in the camera with the Kinect, because it lets developers do all these things and it actually makes a better platform. I'm a bit of a PlayStation person, I'm a Gran Turismo person, and my heart says get a PlayStation 4. But my brain says get an Xbox One, because I'm more excited about the Kinect and the platform and the voice control and all the stuff that it can do that's sort of maybe on the PlayStation, but nowhere near the commitment that you've got from Microsoft. I'm more excited about the Kinect as a platform.
Yeah, look, Microsoft's not made any secret of the fact that it always wanted to be that all-in entertainment box, but there are some limitations to that in Australia, aren't there?
There are a lot of limitations to that in Australia, and that's what I'm really frustrated about. I got my hands on an early review unit, and being more of an entertainment guy than a games guy, there's not actually that much for me to review. Been doing a lot of Forza, I like the driving, but all the things that I really wanted to look at aren't there on launch day. They've said that they're going to have, they're going to have SBS, they're going to have Channel 10, and they're going to have Quick Flicks, none of which are available at launch, but we should see by Christmas. There's no definite dates on Foxtel Play or iView yet, although wink wink nudge nudge, they're coming. You can plug the console, you can plug your PVR into the back of the console, and then the Kinect has IR blasters on it. So basically you can say to the Xbox, change the channel on my TV, and then it will use its IR blasters to change the channel on your TV, but not yet. That's coming with the firmware update. And even when it does, Australia doesn't have the electronic program guide yet. If you're in America and you plug your TiVo into the back of your Xbox and you say, Xbox, show me Channel 10 or show me whatever, or find CSI Miami for me, it'll search through the TV guide and get all that stuff for you. Nothing in Australia, no idea when it might come, and knowing how much of a pain in the butt the Australian networks are to deal with on this stuff, we could be hung out to dry for a very long time. So it's very frustrating for someone like me who's interested in that, wanting to be the general home entertainment console. They both kind of seem to have at least one arm tied behind their back, and I'm going to need to wait a few months to really see the things I want to see from the Xbox One.
Yeah, it feels a bit like a misstep to me. If you want this thing to have PVR abilities, not just to make it a PVR. I've actually noticed in my own testing that some PVRs are happy to go through the Xbox One and some of them are not so happy.
Yeah, that wouldn't surprise me at all. It's going to be very hit and miss. And then once they actually have some more controls, like the ability to turn the channel up and down, will it work with yours? When I had a chat to them when I was in Tokyo at the game show, and they said it'll be a little bit like a Logitech Harmony remote, where they'll have this huge database of devices, or hopefully you'll be able to program it yourself and explain to it, okay, this is how you turn the channel up and down. But yeah, these things are always great in theory. I wouldn't be holding my breath that anything's going to work with this stuff. And what's really frustrating with the PlayStation is that some people in Australia have the Play TV adapter so they can use their PlayStation 3 as a PVR to record television. The Play TV will not work with the PlayStation 4, and at the moment they have no plans to release one for the PlayStation 4. So you're actually losing functionality in there, which we may or may not get back in the last couple of years. So they're almost deliberately driving these home entertainment people away and going, bugger off, if you're not playing, the latest games, then we don't want to know you yet. Maybe in a couple of years' time we'll turn our attention to you.
Based on the stability of the Play TV back when I reviewed it, that might have been a blessing in disguise.
It's not necessarily a bad thing.
Just might.
But it is interesting that they've really turned, after forging new ground on this, they're really turning their back on those kind of users.
And now we come to Love It or Hate It, where we debate a tech topic. One of us taking the love it position, the other one taking the hate it position. This episode, voice and gesture controls. Adam, you love voice and gesture controls. Tell me why.
Yeah, I drew the short straw on this one, didn't I? I love gesture controls. I love sitting on the couch, shouting at my television, hoping it will do as told. I love when my smart-ass 10-year-old son figures out he can walk up the stairs and as he walks away shout out, Skype! Knowing that the television will fire up Skype while you're trying to watch something. It has potential, this stuff. It really does. I've liked what I've seen with the I like what I've seen with the Samsung televisions. I like what the Xbox is trying to do. What's really frustrated me with the Samsung televisions is I don't think they've thought it through though. You can put your hand up in the air and you put your hand up and move it around the spot you want on the screen and then do this to select, that's the button I want to push. And the mute button is this big. Now when I'm watching television, mute is the thing I'm most likely to do. Mute should be this huge button in the middle of the screen so I can just whack my hand up. If it gets to that point where I can just whack my hand up in the air and do that and know I've muted the television, I'll love it. From there, I will use it. But it's got to be that simple. I think there's a few usability things, and again, the risk of people being jerks and shouting stuff out. But in the long term, it does have potential, and I can see how it will take off. But it's got to be something that it's more practical. If it's easier to reach for the remote control, they've failed. It has to get to the point where you find yourself using it because it's actually easier to reach for the remote control. And the mute example is a good one, unless you make the button this big. I definitely think it's the future. And the other problem is, do you have like system overrides? I'm sorry, but your voice doesn't have administrator access, so you can't override the person on the couch who wants to watch something else. So I held hopes for it in the long term. What I've seen has potential. You're not so impressed?
Yeah, look, I'm not a fan. I drew the hate it side of the argument. And frankly, let's face it, that's the easy side. You started out there talking about hope. And basically, anytime you interact with these systems, you've got to hope that they're listening. You've got to hope that you're lucky. And you've got to hope that it actually does anything, even vaguely associated with what you want to do. I mean, whether that's a game where you're meant to make this kind of gesture to do a punch, but instead it interprets you as saying, no, actually, I think I'll drop my firearm. Because that's really what you wanted. And in the end, you kind of just end up giving it that. Yeah. It's just, it's beautiful in its potential, as you say, but it just doesn't work. And the problem is that they overhype it. They overhype it like crazy. I'm impressed with the technology behind the new Kinect, for example. It has much, much better pickup than the previous generation Kinect, but it's still not good enough. The same for any TV that you can talk to. The same pretty much for any GPS that you can give voice commands to. When I say take me home and it decides to tell me instructions on how to crash into the nearest pub, you're not helping.
Or it knows
it's as
you too
simple
well.
as that. Well, yeah, possibly. But otherwise, no, the theory is beautiful. The theory is very Star Trek, but the theory isn't the products that we're being sold right now. What we're being sold right now is a pub. So I think that's enough ranting from both of us, and we should wrap things up here.
Thank you for joining us for the first edition of Vertical Hold to talk about the new consoles, and we'll see you in a fortnight.